Greetings everybody, Guy McMonstermaker here, welcoming you back to the Creatureporium, and today we have a special tutorial for you, and it's an actual full-blown tutorial this time. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking this asset here, and we're going to turn it from this, which is, 4 pieces, into this, which is 6 pieces. And so we're going to break the hands up along with the chainsaw, and we're going to key it all together and get it prepared. As you can tell already, this asset has already been cut and keyed. When I did the initial design and sculpt of it, I envisioned that the hands and the chainsaw would all be one piece, which would make it easier for just keying into the elbow joints. Unfortunately, even though I do have some fairly beefy printers, I didn't have enough space on the build plate for that unless I only wanted to keep it at one set size, and I don't really want to do that. I would like to be able to have the option to make it slightly bigger if necessary than what I had envisioned, which is about a 6 to 7/8 inch statue. So now, cutting it up, I can make it like over a foot tall, from now on if I wanted to. So let's go ahead and jump right in really quick. Now we're gonna go ahead and get rid of the explode view, excuse me, or expose, whatever. Excuse me, and now we are going to take a look at what we have to be cutting apart here. So if we come over to our subtool section here, and we hold down shift and tap the eye, we'll isolate everything except for what we have selected. We're going to go ahead and grab the arm here. Let's turn on polyframe really quick. And as you can see, it's all one piece, which is very convenient. Again, I would like to be able to have the option to cut this into more pieces if necessary. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and hold shift and control, and we're going to select our lasso marquee tool. We're going to just grab everything within the green bounding box, and we're going to get to business. So right off the bat, I can already tell you I'm not going to need any of this, and we are going to be dynameshing this and decimating it and optimizing, so on and so forth. So take some of this with a grain of salt. Alright, so now we're not worrying about topology, we're just worrying about cutting it up. I want to make sure that I'm getting this nice and straight, or as straight as I can. Hold down control and shift, go ahead and come up here to the select menu. We're going to go grab slice curve, and we're going to drag out holding space. We're going to move this into position slightly below. And as you can see, on the right side, it is kind of penetrating the chainsaw. We don't want that, so let's go ahead and see if we can just do a couple of slight adjustments here really quick. Let's try that again. And right about there is where we want it. So we're going to slice right there, and presto, we now have the piece that we need. So let's go ahead and hold down Control Shift, select the marquee again, tap, and now we have everything back the way that we need it, somewhat. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to select the blue. Let's go ahead and grab that. Okay, now we're going to invert that selection. You'll see what we're left with are the remaining pieces of the chainsaw. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to grab this piece here. Be careful not to select the other pieces that you don't need. Alright, so now that we have that done, we're going to go ahead and just come over here, select this one. Now, for me, I have Alt and comma as my hotkey custom menu selector, but if you don't have one, then you're basically just going to go to geometry and go to group visible, or polygroups and go to group visible. I highly recommend that you create a custom menu. In this case, I have Guy's Tools. It's right here. You can dock it whenever. If you need a tutorial on how to create this, go ahead and leave a comment, and I will accommodate. Alright, so now we have this isolated. Let's go ahead and inverse by dragging across the screen, and now all of this. We're going to do the same thing, group visible. Alright, so now we have the hand as one polygroup, chainsaw, and this piece here. So what we want to do now is we're going to take this piece right here, and we're only going to be messing with this. Okay, so if you're having a hard time visualizing this, go ahead and go to Display Properties, go to Double, and you'll be able to see the inside of the geometry as well. We're not really going to be focusing on that too much. The only thing that we really need to be paying attention to is the handle here. Now, the reason why we're doing this, let's go ahead and unhide everything really quick so I can explain the logic behind this. So, the reason why we cut this off here is because we can go ahead and create a key that will insert into the chainsaw. The problem with this piece is that, one, if we, say, chop this part off here, we're not going to be able to key it in. It'll have to be flush against this. That creates an unnecessary, unsightly seam. Now, you're going to be dealing with that no matter what whenever you're creating any sort of 3D printed or just manufacturing object in general. Like, if you have to put it together, there is always the potential of a seam. But in this case, especially when you've been doing this for a long time, you kind of learn where to hide them. So in this case, we do want the seam to be exactly where it's supposed to be on the chainsaw, where he's holding it. So now let's go ahead and, as we did before, we're going to select this, select right about here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to come in here using that marquee lasso select. We're going to start to subtract the pieces of geometry that we know we do not need here. Now, mind you, I have already done this process. This is purely for you, for the sake of the tutorial. So the outcome might be slightly different. It's fine. Doesn't really affect anything one way or the other. That is just my little disclaimer. Alright. Okay, so now we have this here. Take this piece. Subtract that. And actually, okay, let's come over here. And we're going to want to bring some of this back in. Not a whole lot, and I just overgrabbed by quite a bit. It's fine. You can actually disable that by coming over to Brush, and then you can go to Auto Masking, Backface. Again, I also have that down here, right here, in the Quick Select. So now let's go ahead and grab you, same thing, and grab you, same thing. And there we go. Alright, so now that we have this selected, we're going to go ahead and inverse the selection one more time. And as you can see, the hand is no longer attached to this. So we have two ways that we can approach this. We can either come in here and select this piece, and basically it'll just isolate it, or we can go ahead and go to Auto Groups. By doing that, we now have the hand by itself. Okay, so now let's go ahead and bring everything back. We're going to take this hand, we'll isolate it, and then we'll invert the selection, and then we will do the same thing. Wait a minute. Okay, first, we're going to have to backtrack here a second. Let's hide this hand. There we go. Now, go to Auto Groups. Alright, so now let's go ahead and hide that. Hide that. And we're all set here. We'll set this one to Group Visible. Inverse. Subtract. We'll set this one to Group Visible. Now unhide all. And we now have the three pieces that we need in order to get this thing keyed and optimized. So, now we're going to just go ahead and go to Group Split. Okay. Ignore the warning. Let's go ahead and close that. And now we'll come to Subtool, and we now have a couple of new pieces in our library. So let's go ahead and move those down in the stack, because we're going to have to do a little bit of modification to each of these pieces here. So the first thing that we're going to do for this one is we are just going to enable Dynamesh, put it to its max resolution, because we don't want to lose any of the detail that we just created. You'll see that it caps the holes. This is usually a little bit more efficient than doing the hole cap, just the close holes operation. Sometimes that tends to backfire. Okay, so really quick, let's check the topology. We'll see that we have a little piece of floating geometry sitting out here. We don't necessarily want that. So if we go ahead and go to auto groups, you'll see that it isolates itself in 3D space. We can just go ahead and take that, invert selection, and now we can go to split hidden, and now that little tiny dingleberry is eliminated. That was remnants from the finger that we separated, and it was just kind of floating in space. Alright, so now that we have this done, we're going to go ahead and let's come over here. And as you can see, this is very, very jagged and wonky looking. We don't want that really. So let's go ahead and just kind of smooth this out. This part is not particularly crucial. I mean, all of it's crucial in terms of, you know, how you construct your pieces. However, you're never really going to see this part. So when I say not crucial, I just mean in terms of the detail. Now, that said, you do want it to try to look as clean as you can, simply for the sake of presentation, but no one's ever going to see it. They're going to see these chainsaw blades before they see that. And boy, are those beautiful. Made them myself. Okay, so here we go. Now we have this piece, and it is all laid out. Now let's go ahead and unhide the other hand. And really quick, let's go to our naming convention. We'll call this chainsaw. We'll come up to this arm, and we will call it arm. And that is the right hand, so R. And then we'll come up to this one, and we will rename that arm L for left arm, right arm. Okay, now we'll see that this is now in place, and we have the same issue. There's a hole there, so we're going to want to go ahead and take that, convert it to a Dynamesh as well. Now from here, we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing. We're going to just smooth this out. Again, the resolution here is not particularly high, and that is by necessity. It's high enough for the detail to come through, you know, as far as the print is concerned, but, you know, no one's ever going to be that close to your piece. Okay, so let's come back down to the chainsaw. Okay, so we have those two activated, and when we turn on transparency, you'll see that they line up pretty much perfectly, but that's not how we make this key. What some people might suggest is taking this end here and extruding and pulling it out. We're going to do something a little cleaner and a little bit more efficient. What we're going to do is we're going to come over here to standard. We're going to go to I, and then we're going to come over here to insert multi-mesh primitives. We're going to select a rectangle or a cube, and let's go ahead and take this here, and let's straighten this out just a little bit. Doesn't have to be, but what it's going to do is it's going to basically extrude along the normal of this piece of geometry, and the normal is basically the front-facing polygons. That is a normal. That's what normal means in this instance. So now we're going to go ahead and take this. We're going to push it back in, basically to just before it penetrates, and you know, the outer wall here. Now let's go ahead and extrude forward, or scale forward. And let's go ahead and kind of rotate it a little bit. Let's turn the hand back on, turn transparency back on, and then we'll be able to see exactly where this piece lies in 3D space. So, I feel like that right there is not what we in fact want. So let's go ahead and rotate this down just a little bit more, and that gives us a little bit more of a streamlined, straighter insert point right about there. And now we can come in and scale this up a little bit more. Let's push it in just a little bit more, and I think that'll do. If we turn off transparency, you'll see that we do not see that cube, but we know that it is in there and it is connected to the chainsaw. So let's go ahead and go back to edit, And let's go ahead and drag out the mask. Drag one more time to re-Dynamesh. Now, one thing that we can do really quick is let's just come in here and smooth all these corners out. It's not, again, not necessary, but sometimes it does, you know, help with the key insertion process. Okay, so that's why we're doing it. So now we have this key basically created for this chainsaw. So the chainsaw is almost done. Okay, so there's two things that we have to do to the chainsaw. We have to create a key, and then we have to create the holes for the key to go into. I'm going to break them down into two separate things, like two separate sections, because otherwise it can get a little confusing with the live Boolean operations and stuff like that, and I don't want to do that to you. So we have this hand, and we have this chainsaw and this key. So now what we need to do is we're going to take the hand here, right? Okay, and we are going to duplicate it. Okay, so now that it is duplicated, we have basically our reference hand. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Wrong thing. We're not duplicating that one. We're duplicating the chainsaw. Okay, so we're taking the chainsaw. We're going to duplicate that. We're going to drag it above the hand. Alright, so now that we have the hand and this chainsaw on the bottom, we're going to hit this little arrow here, and that means that anything underneath that arrow is going to be affected by the Boolean operation that we're about to do. So if we set this to subtract, and we operate live Boolean, you'll see that nothing is happening right now, and the reason is because we have this chainsaw on. I always do that by necessity, because I like to see how much of a gap I'm going to have when I do the Boolean operation. If you don't want to see that, or if you're confident in your numbers, you can just turn that off, and it'll automatically show you the preview for the mesh that's going to be created. So in this case, I'm going to turn that on really quick. We're going to come down to the bottom chainsaw, the one that is affecting the actual geometry that we want it to affect, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to inflate, and we're going to set that to, in this case, 1 should be fine. And as you can see, we now see that gap there. We want to see that gap. Now, the reason why I go and enter actual values instead of just kind of moving the slider along is because the slider is very erratic. So, as you can see, you get a very inconsistent potential number. We don't want that. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and set 1. You can even go up to, if you prefer, you can go up to 1.2 or 1.5. In this case, 1.5 will give us a slightly bigger gap. Alright, we're just going to go ahead and stick with 1 because I know that 1 is a good number. Alright. We'll do 1.2. Okay. Anyhow, let's go ahead and turn off the top chainsaw, the one that we're actually keeping. Alright, and now you'll see this is what we're left with. If we come down, you'll see that was the initial Boolean operation. This is the new one. The reason why we always inflate when we create these keys is because we need to have a little bit of a pocket for air, glue, whatever, to fit in. If we made everything 1-to-1, it would, in theory, it should kind of fit in, but it never does. So you always want to make sure that you make the piece that you're creating the Boolean operation with slightly larger than the actual piece that's going to be fitting in there. So now that we have that done, we have our arm, we have our chainsaw. Now all we need to do is go ahead and make sure everything else is turned off, and we're going to go to make Boolean mesh. And we're going to sit here for a moment, and we're just going to wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. Oh, it says it can't be performed. That happens often. It's nothing to worry about. We're going to go ahead and come back up to here, and you'll see that the Boolean operation is still waiting to be completed. Right? So we're just going to do the same thing. So make Boolean mesh. Now that error usually happens sometimes when you're working with Dynameshed pieces, or if you're working with like a lot of subtools. Sometimes it tends to give you that error. In this case, it says right here, the Boolean operation has succeeded, but blah, 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 potential yada, yada. Don't worry about any of that. Generally, that's just crap that pops up in certain instances, not all the time. So now that we have that done, we're just going to tap on the screen, and we now have our booleaned arm. So now we're going to come back to our subtool here that has 7, okay? And you'll see that we have our arm and we have that chainsaw. We're now going to delete that arm because we no longer need it. We're going to delete the chainsaw on the bottom of the stack because we no longer need that. Never delete the one above the booleaned object, ever. You'll have a bad time. Okay, so now we're going to go to append. From here, we're going to take that arm, and now, as you can see, we have the arm with the key already presented, and everything is looking hunky-dory, super-duper, awesome, fun time, hooray. Now, the first thing that we want to do is we're going to take that arm, we're going to rename it one more time. So arm underscore R, or just arm R, as I put it. And the chainsaw, we're going to now put this as the focal piece to be affected. So now we're going to go ahead and move this arm up. We're going to take this arm here, and we are going to do things to it. So now we have this arm, and it has not been optimized with the Dynamesh applied. So we're going to go and turn Dynamesh on really quick. Now everything is nice and sealed up. Okay, so what we want is for this handle to basically be able to be keyed straight into the chainsaw. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take those same insert multi-mesh primitives. We're going to get the cylinder. Now, we can do this a million different ways. I prefer to use insert multi-mesh when necessary because it is fast and it's efficient. But if you can think of a better way to create keys, by all means, do it. But this is definitely one of those tried and true techniques that is fast and efficient, and it will get the job done. And it will orient everything correctly. So having said that, we're now going to drag and we're going to pull the cylinder across the normal, again, of the surface that we just cut. And let's say that that is a acceptable key for us. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to move, and we're just going to scale this out. Let's push it in slightly, just a little bit, so that it has something to grip when we do the Dynamesh. Okay, so now that we have that one done, let's go ahead and we're going to take that, hold down Control, we're going to drag down, and we're going to put it into that handle there. Now, because the rotation axis and orientation are the same for both pieces, you'll notice that they line up in a perfectly straight line. That is exactly what we want. In this instance, we can kind of manipulate this just a little bit. Okay. So now that we have that done, once again, we're going to go back to Draw. Let's go ahead and disable the mask, and let's drag out one more time. And now it is Dynameshed. So from here, we are going to do the exact same thing that we did previously, a little bit, like in reverse. Okay, so we have the chainsaw. We have the hand. Okay, the hand we're going to duplicate, and we are going to put it below the chainsaw. Let's turn the chainsaw on. We'll turn the other hand on for visibility's sake. Now, when we turn on transparency, you'll see that we have this key that is directly inserted into the chainsaw, and it is flush with the back of it, which is exactly how we need it. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to disable transparency. We're going to come over here. We're going to pay attention to how this is laid out. Once again, we're going to take the chainsaw, hit the little arrow. Everything underneath is affected. We're going to hit this, set this to subtract. And then once again, we are going to inflate this, and we'll do it 1.2. And that was a mistake. We just inflated the chainsaw. So make sure that you select the correct subtool, which is the bottom one. Sometimes it's hard to see the contrast because of the gray, and I have shitty vision. I'm not going to pretend. Alright, so now we're on the correct layer. So let's go ahead and go to inflate, 1.2, enter, and you'll see that we now have our booleaned operation. So if we go ahead and we turn this off, you'll see that that is our chainsaw, complete with 2 insert pegs to be used with our awesome new hand. Right here. Right? Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and turn that off. And we're going to come over here and we are going to do the same Boolean operation. So make Boolean mesh. It's probably going to give the same bullpucky, yep, there you go, cannot be performed, blah, blah, blah. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and select those two. We're going to do one more time, make Boolean mesh. And it's going to go by super quick. And there we go, right about there. There we go. Alright, so now we have that done. Let's go back to our subtools. You can do this in two ways. Okay, so in the first time I deleted everything and then I re-imported the stuff that I had just modified. For those of you who are a little bit more weary or cautious, you can go to append first, find the piece, verify that it worked, and then bring it in. So that's what we did here. I already know that it worked, but there are many different ways to skin a cat. That's the other way. So now we have the one that we just modified, the crappy one. So now we can hit delete, hit OK. We have the shitty arm, delete, OK. I don't think I'm supposed to say that on YouTube. We have the poopy arm. OK, now when we turn this one on, we'll see that we have the hand with the key directly set in. Again, don't mind the lack of detail on the inside. When you're looking at the piece in its entirety, you don't really get to see the inside too much. So there you go. It's all about efficiency. Don't see it, don't sculpt it. Alright, so now that that is done, we are good to go. We're pretty much ready. So, I mean, all you got to do now is just, you know, disable Dynamesh, optimize all these pieces with Decimation Master, export them, and you're all set. One thing that I do recommend is you go to Z plugin, go to Scale Master, and set Zbrush Scale Unify, and that will make sure that they are all relatively decent sized pieces. So when you export them, they're not like the size of a car or the size of an ant, you know. All right, so that's it. This is Guy McMonstermaker saying thank you for watching. I hope you found this video useful, and now hopefully you know how to do a little bit of keying yourself. It's a very involved process. And for those of us who make all of our assets from scratch, it's something that we do daily, and I don't think it gets enough attention. So I hope that it helped you. Stay tuned for more videos, and as always, thank you for watching the Creatureporium, and yeah, talk to you guys later.